Please stand by. We'll be starting shortly. Welcome and thank you for joining. In keeping with the Marketing Hall of Fame mission, today is all about celebrating brilliance in marketing. The inspiration, as you may know, for bringing the future forward is to learn from our cohort of brilliant inductees and to gain their perspective on the future of marketing in the new world in which we're living. Some of them are live and some will offer their insights via video clips that have been selected from their induction talks. This is not a virtual awards ceremony. That said, we did complete the nominations and voting for the 2020 live event earlier this year, and we plan to pick up where we left off with our next live networking celebration when we can do so safely in 2021. Thanks to the Marketing Hall of Fame Academy members and all of you who voted. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors, Cisco, Columbia University Business School, Green Book, and Tenant Partners, a brand innovation consultancy and author of the most powerful brand report. And I'd also like to thank our dedicated volunteers who have helped to organize and promote today's event. If you'd like to pose some questions at any point in the presentation today, you can do so by going to the lower right hand of your screen. You'll see 3 buttons there. The question mark is the button that will allow you to go and enter your questions, and we'll be addressing those later. So let's begin. I'll turn it over to Joanna Seddon.
It is my pleasure to introduce our live inductees. We have Seth Godin, best-selling author and blogger to millions. Hi, Seth. We have Jim Stengel, former CMO of P&G, author of Grow and the Champion of Purpose.
Hi, Joanna. Hi, Seth. Hi, Bob.
And we have Shelley Lazarus, who in her 4 decades at Ogilvy has shaped it into the powerhouse it is today. Hi, Shelley. And we also have some late-breaking news. Our 4th participant, Anne Lune, CMO of Adobe, is being called away. We're excited to have John Travis join the discussion. He's worked closely with Anne for many, many years as her partner with huge responsibility for running brand and marketing and transforming both at Adobe and at Intel. I was going to say he'll be joining us a little bit later, but John, you're here.
I mean, I'm a surprise guest. That's right.
Yes, I was expecting you to be late, but that's even better. Fabulous. So what we're going to do to set the scene, we've been through our team that you just saw. We went right through the treasure trove of all of our former inductees' perspectives on the future of marketing. We have 20 inductees over the last 6 years and identified 4 key themes that are of extreme relevance to us today. For each theme, we'll show short video clips from inductees as conversation starters for those who are present live. We're also going to stand ready to answer questions you send in, so please keep them coming. The first thing we heard from the everything we looked at in all our video presentations about the future was that marketing's job is to think ahead. Great marketers start from the future and work back to the present, a topic of critical importance in the world that we're living in today with the future so uncertain. So let's hear on video what Keith Weed, former CEO of Unilever, had to say on this last year.
I'm sorry, Joanna, we lost your last sentence.
Oh, Seth, kick off. You kick off the commentary.
Well, thank you. And first, you blew through the volunteer slide, and you and Bob and everyone else has worked so hard on this. I need to just use a little bit of my time to say thank you. It's selfless work, and it makes a difference.
Thank you, Seth. That's very nice of you to say that.
So with that said, I will be my iconoclastic self. I fear that marketers are about to waste a magnificent opportunity, and we have to decide what's our purview and what's not, because the world has changed. To have been a marketer in the 40s and 50s must have been an extraordinary thing. Sitting over on my shelf, Shelley, is a copy of Ogilvy on Advertising. I notice it is not called Ogilvy on Marketing. It is called Ogilvy on Advertising. Because in the 40s and 50s, there was a confluence of four things. Factories were working more efficiently than ever before, and people were buying what they were making. Number two, television, a miracle, was dramatically underpriced. Number three, stores had shelf space that was not yet scarce. And number four, money was flowing in and you needed to spend it to get some of that TV and to get some of that shelf space. But now, all four things are totally different. And so when we look around us, as so many people are struggling with health issues and trauma around the economy, around race, when we're looking at a world that's turned upside down, and we say, what are the brands, the companies, the movements that matter? Well, it turns out that the packaged goods companies are still doing fine, thank you very much, but they're not turning up one new brand after another the way they were in the 60s, because the engine of marketing is not advertising. And so the question is, what do marketers even do? And I have to disagree with Keith. I don't think that marketers pay attention to where money's going to come from. I think marketers invent the culture. And it turns out that the network is the culture, the software is the culture, the movements are the culture, the things we choose to attach our emotions and our journey to are the culture. And too often we say, oh no, the marketer is the person who wrote that piece of spam, or the marketer is the person who's trying to sell us a payday loan. I don't think that belongs to marketing. I think marketing is making things better by making better things. And I wonder, where is the marketer who is working on the story we tell ourselves about carbon? And where is the marketer who is working on how we understand the shifts in our culture so that we can get back to living in a world of civil discourse? And yeah, where is the marketer who is building the next generation that will challenge the monopolists like Google and Facebook? These are marketing decisions, not advertising decisions. And so when someone like William Schroeder says, how do I become a CMO? I'd say, hey, William, here's the deal. The average tenure of a CMO at a big company is 18 months. Not for someone like Jim, who's super talented, but in general, 18 months. Why 18 months? The reason is you get the job by making amazing promises, and it takes them a year and a half to figure out that you don't have enough leverage to keep those promises. That what we need are people who are going to show up in the field and say, everything that touches the market is on my watch. The way we answer the phone, the stuff we dump in the river, the way our code works, who we hire, how we interact, all of it is marketing. And I am thrilled that the Hall of Fame is seeing this and understanding it and broadening this from bringing us average products for average people and we'll figure out how to advertise them to let's not make average stuff for average people. And let's take responsibility for what we make and bring people stories that are true, that connect them and help them get to where they want to go. So that's my rant, but mostly I wanted to talk to Shelley and John and Jim and anybody else who wants to talk about this.
So, Jim, do you want to go next? You're next on my screen.
Seth, thank you for that. And I echo your thanks to the AMA, and good to be with Shelley and John. I miss Ann, but you're okay, John.
Thanks, Jim.
So, I mean, I'm picking up on where Seth went on that. You know, I think this multi-leveled crisis is so sad in many ways, but it is a wake up and a rebooting for a lot of people and a lot of marketing people. So, you know, I'm one beautiful part of my life is I do this podcast and I talk to 2 marketers a week, get into their life, their values, where they come from, where they're going, talk to the human side of the person, not the company. And there's just a feeling that we've got to be way more important to this world. We've got to be more choiceful, more purposeful, more useful, more human, more empathetic, and not just to chat about it, but to do stuff about it. Social action and social justice. You know, companies have talked about this for a long time, and some of the great companies have done something about it. But there is a level of resolve, commitment, movement that I haven't seen in my career. And I think once you start that, you can't stop it because you'll be you'll just be persecuted for it, as you should be. So I do think there's a lot of shifts coming out of this pandemic. And I think the way that marketers think about their job and their impact is going into a different dimension. So that's a positive thing going on. But Seth, I agree with you, but I think something very special is happening right now. It's this confluence of all these things going on in culture and society, and people are rising up.
Out of here.
John, you just kick your dog out or your kid out?
Yeah, that was. I was like, please, don't come in.
So Shelley, you've seen a lot of up and downs in brand and marketing.
Well, I do agree with Keith when he says this is the best time to be a marketer, because I think it's the most challenging time, and when there's challenge, good things usually come out of it. I also agree with Seth on all of it is marketing, and sort of that's kind of where I start from. It's not an ad campaign, and it's not a life. Everyone's saying, "What's the line?" It's not a line. It's everything. And I think this goes back to, not to be simplistic about it, but it all comes down to, a big, powerful idea. If there were ever a time when we need big, powerful ideas, it would be now, because frankly, with everything as fragmented, with as many different ways to communicate today, if you don't have an idea, I don't know what integrates all those things. And if you don't find an integrator for everything you're doing, then it's just each little piece is now so small that I don't know how you get impact unless you have an idea that brings everything together. I find myself on a lot of calls these days because everyone is looking for a narrative, right? So how do you tell the story? It's sort of, it's kind of, Jim, back to the, or Seth, what do we do about carbon? Well, I've been working with the World Wildlife Fund for decades now. Everybody seems to feel a need to do something about climate change, but we can't kind of get the collective to move in a single direction. And as of even like 10 days ago, I'm on a call where they're going, where is the narrative? Not yes, a wonderful story, but a story that's actually going to move people to take action. Because all the pretty words and pictures in the world, if no one then moves to do something, are really not that important. And I think it's at a moment like this when you're just desperate to figure out, how can I get every single person in the world to wear a mask? Here's the power of communication. Here's the power of marketing, is we could figure out how to do that if we all came together and did it. And so I go back again to Keith, that yes, this is the best time to be a marketer, because God, are we needed right now.
So I would definitely agree with that. And I would say, Seth, I think from my vantage point, the biggest difference and why it's such a great time to be a marketer is because I think, at least in my experience, marketers are now in the position where we understand the customer more than anyone else in the company. And, when I grew up in marketing, I used to go to product units and say, tell me about the product users and tell me about the customer. And now we have such a deep understanding beyond the products they buy and use, but their behavior and their beliefs and their feelings. And Jim, that goes to your comment on purpose. We're not doing purpose because we want to necessarily. We do want to, but it matters. It matters to our customers. And we understand that because we understand their thoughts and their feelings and their behavior far more than we ever have. And so that's what I would say, Seth, why it's so great to be a marketer. I love being a marketer because it's this amazing kind of confluence of data and emotion and instinct and creativity, and it's cool. But I think there was a question about how do I prove that I have more value than making an ad campaign? And it goes back to me. Yes, now we have the data to prove the efficacy and the ROI of our campaigns, but beyond that, I go into conversations now and I know just as much, if not more, about the customer than other folks that are actually responsible for making the products for those customers. And that's a unique and special position that we should embrace. Because all of what you are talking about comes from, you don't get an idea just by being creative. And it's a deep insight into who are you talking to. But really the fundamental basics of marketing. What's my problem? Who am I talking to? But we used to know so little, at least I felt that way. And today, well, I don't know everything. I know a lot more. And so, Seth, that's what I would say is kind of one of the biggest reasons why, especially in the future of marketing, why it's so exciting today. Totally different place in the company than we had even 5 years ago.
Well, just to put a pin in this a little bit, when I was VP at Yahoo, there were 6 VPs, and there were over 2,000 employees, and the marketing department had 4 people in it. And at Google, which has changed our culture from the top to the bottom, marketers are never allowed into a meeting. And at most nonprofits, the people who are driving it, leaving aside Scott Harrison or people like Jacqueline Novogratz, the marketers aren't there either. And these people are doing marketing without acknowledging they are marketers. They are doing marketing at the very same time they are dripping with contempt for so many of the things that we know and understand. Google refuses to accept responsibility for the impact they're making. They're saying it's the algorithm. Well, yeah, but a human being who was acting like a marketer without a license made those decisions. And I think we need to be in the room. Someone needed to be in the room when Volkswagen decided to cheat on their emissions, but they didn't invite any marketers into the room because marketers said, bring us the car when it's done and we'll make an ad.
There's a really great...
Steph, I agree completely. I mean, you know, this is, I say this so often, is I can always tell when a marketer has not been at the table. You know, so even sitting on boards and things like that, you go, because you just know people are doing things that no marketer in the world would have done. And I always say you ought to have them in the room, if only to keep you from doing stupid things, even if you don't want to listen to the things they suggest you should do. But I agree, and you can tell. I'm going to make a bet that you could go around to companies and almost tell from what the end product is of whether there was a marketer present for these different discussions. I wanted to make one other point about, because Jim, I think about you every day about, you know, sort of where we are right now is when Jim first started to talk about purpose, you were like, okay, now that we've talked about everything else, now let's have Jim sort of talk to us about perhaps the right thing to do. Now you're at the center now. I don't know, Jim, how many years it took. I lost track, but I'm sure you haven't.
20 to 25, I would say.
But it's, you know, it's true. It's sort of now nobody has a conversation about marketing or consumers or anything or internal audiences, HR is without talking about purpose. And every time that happens, I have to say, I think Jim Stengel started this. So
the important thing is it's patching. You know, I was at the ANA meeting last week. I don't know if anyone streamed that. I mean, it was 3 days, and it was like 8-hour days with streaming. So it was a tough one to get through. But it's, you know, the meeting is very old-fashioned. It's brand people telling cases, telling stories, and I have to say the role of purpose and business impact. You know, we've arrived at that. People get it. It's about action. It's about making a difference with customers and the world and society. So there were some incredible stories told last week. I mean, CVS, what they have done since stopping tobacco and buying Aetna, and, you know, they've added something like $100 billion on their top line in the last 7 or 8 years. And their culture is electric with making an impact. And so one of the many great stories told, but Sally, it's about purpose being, when everyone understands it and feels like it makes a difference in their daily life and they know their role in it, then it starts to move a business. And we've gotten to that place with a lot of companies.
Joanna,
That's interesting.
It's a good time to hear from our audience. We've
A lot
prepared
of stuff coming in.
a poll question that we'd like to put to everybody, because obviously there's so much that's changing in our daily routine because of COVID-19 and the current situation. And we can do this rather quickly. So if you take a look at the question here, which of the following do you think will have the greatest long-term impact? And if everybody wants to vote, we'll see the results fairly quickly. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but this is something we had planned to do.
Okay. So online purchases or brands held to higher standards going to win. Okay. Okay. So the winner is higher expectations from brands, which really, I'm glad to say, it's closely beating online purchases in store. So clearly, these are two of the topics that people are going to want to hear about as we go through. So let's go on and look at our second theme that emerged from our listening to our inductees over the years, and that is the heightened importance of purpose for brands, queued up beautifully, and how critical it is that brands are seen not only to have a purpose but to deliver on it. So we've got some great questions coming in, which we will tackle as we go. But let's hear first from Lee Clow, one of the greatest creatives ever, and, as we all know, creator of the iconic Apple 1984 video, which is so topical again today.
50 years ago when I started in this business, marketing was done by Harvard MBAs, and advertising was like a 30-second television commercial or a magazine ad. Today, I think it's all changed dramatically. Everything a brand does is advertising. Now, you guys probably would like to look at it from your vantage point. Everything a brand does is marketing. But whichever way you look at it, all the behavior of a brand adds up to how brands are judged out there in the world today.
Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia, who, as you can see, has strong views on brand and marketing.
Marketing at Patagonia is very simple. We just tell people who we are. And I don't have any agency to thank up here. That's a pretty easy task if you have nothing to hide and you have interesting true stories. For instance, writing fiction is a lot more difficult than nonfiction because it takes creativity and imagination. And the most difficult photography is fashion photography. When I die and go to hell, the devil's going to make me marketing director of a cola company. That's a product with a few cents worth of flavorings and high fructose corn syrup and water, and it's guaranteed to give you diabetes and make you fat. So I'd have to build a marketing campaign by paying very high-priced celebrities to lie about how they love the product. And I'd probably have to use a bunch of now worthless words like authentic.
So, Jim, you want to kick off with your views on what you think the role of purpose will be in the changing world in which we're now living?
Is that mine, Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. Over to you, Jim. Definitely you, Mr. Purpose.
Well, it takes a village, and that's why we're seeing a change. And Shelley, thanks for your comments, but I remember Robin flew to see me from South Africa when I first became CMO at P&G, and he said, I hear you believe in this purpose stuff. Here's what I believe, and here's what we believe, and here's what we'd love to do to help the industry move forward. So it was your chief creative officer at the time, and he's passed away, unfortunately, many years ago. But it takes a village, right? So the voices we just heard, Lee Clow was one of the people that talked me into leaving P&G. He came to see me and said, "You've done your thing here, man. Your ideas will help others. So why don't you just leave and do that?" And he told me to write a book, and he gave me the title of the book.
which I didn't use, but it's actually a great title, Packaged Good. I should have used his title. It's way better. And so I think, Lee is, it's what Seth opened up with, right? It's all behaviors. It's all behaviors. And Chouinard is just, wonderful. And I think what he pointed to is we're in a culture now where if people don't believe in the place they work and the people they're working for, it's over. And I have to give Indra a lot of credit at Pepsi for seeing that a long time ago. And she took a lot of heat from Wall Street and others, a lot of pundits, when she said, we've got to move this company more in a healthy direction. And yeah, they still sell Pepsi, but it's a really different company than it was 12, 15 years ago. And so, so if people aren't feeling proud and cool about what they're working on and what they're selling, it's over. So I think Chouinard is right, and he's been way ahead of many things. And he is what he is, very special person, very special brand. He would have been a great client, Shelley.
Yeah, to be sure.
So anyway, I think I'm encouraged. This damn crisis, I think, has accelerated a lot of people believing and acting on purpose. I do feel that we still have measurement issues and all the short-termism and the Wall Street stuff. Until we find some way to link causality with purpose actions and financial results, and it's there, I think it's going to be at the whim of leaders. So it's something I'm working. It's an R&D project of ours. How can we kind of crack the purpose measurement thing? And I think once we do that, it will be way more sustained.
Mm-hmm. Shelley, I know you have views on Yvon, yeah?
No, so that was my favorite speech, I think, perhaps, that I've ever heard about marketing. It was just fantastic. It's because when Joanna and I were talking about this, I said we've got to show Yvon's speech. But I think you have two vectors that are coming together here for purpose. One is that the people who work for companies, as you said, even if the CEO and the leaders don't want to pay any attention to purpose, they can't ignore it anymore, because their employees, and the younger they are, the more this is true. They demand that they are working for a company that does good, or they're just going to go home or find another job. And the more talented they are, the more jobs they have available. That's one thing. I think the other thing that's happening, which is fascinating, is you have the birth of ESG in the corporate world. So you have sort of the young, purposeful, kids who care, younger people, and then you have the big corporate behemoths who are now being held to these standards of, let's hear about your environmental and social goals, because we care and we're going to count them. And now you have investors just over the last few weeks saying, we'd like to see reported numbers on what you're actually doing in this whole area of ESG. And Jim, I think your point about we've got to figure out how to measure these things, because they can't just be in the ether. The more important they become to sort of corporate reporting, the more we need to have the means by which we can measure these things. But I think I am never in a meeting these days on any sort of results reporting, whatever, where the subject of ESG does not come forward as a factor that is going to have to be dealt with and move forward on. And so I think you have these two things coming together from two sides, and good things will happen as a result of them.
I'm so encouraged by both of you, because I've been on a lot of these types of panels, and when the purpose conversation comes up, it often comes up as we need to get our purpose story out there. It's like a campaign, right? And it is very important that people know that for all the reasons you said. But I just want to give you guys a couple examples, because it does start from within, and it starts with employees. And I'll give you a Adobe example. And by the way, I actually now run corporate social responsibility. We moved it into the brand function. as opposed to kind of a separate group of do-goody people on the side, because it is so fundamental to your point to investors, customers, employees. But when the murder of George Floyd happened, how is Adobe going to respond? And by the way, Adobe has a 70% employee volunteerism, where 80% of our philanthropy is actually guided by employees, not by me or anyone else at the company. Employees actually vote and decide in their local communities where our philanthropic volunteering investments will go. But we actually turn to our Black Employee Network and our employees to help us decide what the response was going to be. And I will tell you, as painful as that time was, and it is still painful, what a sense of teamwork and togetherness that created, because the gestures that we made, the actions we took to help contribute to the solution is really driven from within to the very core of the employees themselves. So I'm really, Jim, I love that was your first comment, because I think that's often missed. Yes, employees want to work at companies that do good, but you know what? They want to do good themselves. And so that's the difference. And I think we as leaders and marketers, but also just leaders in general, have to think about employees so differently today, not just as a way to keep good employees, but that's part of their job now. That's what they want to do. And so I really appreciate that comment, Jim.
Yeah.
And Seth, maybe you can address this. There's all sorts of great questions coming in from the audience. And one, to John's point, was, will this current emphasis of employees on and consumers on caring that corporations are seen to do good with their brands, will that last? Or will, as people are worrying about their jobs and life changes, will that go away?
I'm not that good at predicting the future, but if we look at the past, when times get tough, people often make short-term decisions because they need to feed their family. And we are facing a long slog going forward. I think that one of the challenges as we look at even more income inequality is, what are corporations even for? And why do we even have brands? And Milton Friedman, who won a fake Nobel Prize, famously persuaded people that the purpose of a corporation was to maximize shareholder value and profit, which is nonsense. It's not written down anywhere in the history of corporations that that's its function. And what we need to do as marketers, as people who get to tell the story and sit at the table, is say, we're not here to maximize short-term profit. We're here because we have lots of choices, and the choice we are making is to show up for the people we are serving, even if, especially if, it's not going to make our profit in the short run. And that's Patagonia's actual story. Patagonia's actual story is every single time he has made a decision that everyone else in the clothing business says is stupid and will hurt his profits, he has stuck with it, even though maybe it did. But it is possible to build a vibrant, important company, whether you're making clothes or chemicals, where you can say, I did this and I am proud of it, without an asterisk and without an excuse. So to one of our commenters who commented earlier, is there any evidence that marketers are more ethical? No, there's no evidence whatsoever, except that marketers who are paying attention, their job is to listen to the market. And sometimes the market wants something in the short run that's not good for all of us. And then the marketer has to ignore those people. And that takes judgment and that takes ethics.
That's a good one. Bob, do you want to feed another question?
Yes. Hang on one second. We have, hold on one second.
While Bob's looking that up, I'm afraid I have to go do a gig. I apologize, but this was a super fun half hour. Great to talk to everyone. Don't go away, but I have to drop off.
Seth, good to see you.
Bye, Seth.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question, and we addressed this point or heard about it in the poll that we took a little bit, but there's been a fair amount of talk about brand loyalty diminishing. What do our commentators think about whether that's going to be less important in the future or not?
Yeah, I think it's going to be much more important. I mean, to the extent, first of all, the more choices you have as a consumer, the more important brands become, sort of because you need help in sort of sorting through what's out there. I think the more online, the other question, the more virtual everything is, the more you're going to have to carry the knowledge of what these brands represent and therefore how you interpret them
for any product or service. You're going to have to bring that with you to the screen as you're making your choices. And so I think there too, having an integrated brand idea and going beyond just the theory of the case, look at the brands that have done well during the pandemic. I mean, we're back to Campbell's soup and Oreo cookies and all the tried and true, the things you know and trust, the sort of the most basic definition of a brand is where consumers are now going. So I think it more and more and more important.
Yeah, I hear, Shelley. And also, people are becoming way more choiceful right now on the company side and consumer side. So the number of SKUs coming out of this are going to be way down. And I think that's going to change the market dynamics. And I also think that in a world of voice, and we're going to be ordering by voice now. We are now, but we'll be doing everything by voice more and more. What's the role of the brand in a voice world? It's even more important, because if you're not tied when you want laundry and you're asking for laundry on Amazon, good luck. So I think there are some dynamics that are going to push toward the bigger brands, the ones that are more innovative, where there's more trust, and I think the market dynamics are pointing in that direction.
I would also just say, at least from our vantage point, having a great product is not enough. And, we went from a company that sold box software and through a retailer. We had no connection, really very limited connection to our customer, to a subscription-based cloud service. And so it's not enough to get someone to sign up for our creative tools, but it's all about engagement and retention. And how do we really focus on making sure that they're getting the value out of the product, they're getting the innovation, they're getting the support they need. It's a business imperative, but it's also just, I think, beyond our business. I think for all businesses, thinking about your customer more as a community around you, and how do you really engage them full time beyond just selling them a product. And we have an entire group of people in division and focus, all not about selling a product, but simply on engagement. And that's totally new than how we thought, a few years ago. So I think customer loyalty, the younger generation, they're not as loyal. They're ready to switch when they want. You really have to engage them. You're in a relationship, and that's what you really have to think about.
So one of the questions that came up was, does this kind of opening that's caused by COVID, of people being maybe willing to try new things, does that create an opportunity for new brands? And if so, how should they exploit it?
That's a great question. The answer is yes. It is opening up opportunities. Categories are exploding that have been dormant for years, and needs are changing. There's commentary about comfort food. People are looking for comfort. To be a liquor brand right now. So the consumer is really shaken up and dynamic right now. And so you hear a lot of talk about agility and flexibility and faster decision making. That's happening among marketers, and it needs to happen because things are so dynamic. I don't think any of us know where it's going to shake out, but there are categories that have millions of new users, and they're trying to figure out now, what do we do with that? How do we keep them? How do we keep them beyond the pandemic? What are the real needs? Why have they come to us? How can we be more useful and more relevant? So it gets back to Shelley's point when we started. And Keith's point. It is another reason it's a good time to be in marketing, because the cards have been thrown up in the air, and so it's up to the great marketers with the great brands and the great cultures to rise up, understand people, and be there for them.
Yeah, I would just speak as being in a tech company. The trends that we were seeing in terms of businesses, moving to digital orientation, the kind of rise of the expressive consumer. A lot of people far beyond a creative professional want to create content, want to tell their story. I think COVID has just magnified it across the board, not just for Adobe, but a lot of companies. So we're living through it right now, just that fast track. Now I'm a business, I have to toggle from a retail experience to a delivery service. now I'm stuck at home, I'm bored, I want to create something on social and make a great video. We're seeing an explosion of new customers and just the pace to which this change is happening. So we're living through that right now.
Another topic that keeps coming in all these questions that are flooding in, is really a reaction to the discussion earlier about marketing not having a seat at the table. And connected with that, we've got a lot of questions of how do we not just get marketing to get its seat at the table, but get marketing to be accepted and work with other departments. We talked about corporate sustainability coming into Adobe, for example. So what should marketers do? How do we get marketing the seat it should have in the company?
Well, it's got to be, people have to realize how big, important, and impactful it is. I mean, let's go to Patagonia. Let's go to Yvon Chouinard. It's all brand. Everything that company does is brand. He may not run advertising campaigns the same way, but everything that Patagonia does, from the way the stores look to the packaging to the way that the tags are on the size tags, the material information, who they hire, how they speak, it's all brand. And I know that in Patagonia, I don't know who the marketing people are, but I know who the brand owner is, and that's Yvon. So in the really great companies, the CEOs own the brand. They may give part of it, sort of the execution of it away to different people. And so I think at the point where the company, the entity, recognizes that the role of the marketing director is to have the idea that drives the entire company forward, then that person will have a seat at the table. And I think when they don't, it's often because they can't get people to see beyond the fact that they are responsible for creating the advertising. But that is just one small piece of what their contribution is to actually moving the company forward. I always used to say that it sort of broke my heart when when the CFO would cut the marketing budget, but then the revenue line would stay intact. Now, to me, that is the greatest evidence of the fact that people don't see that these things are so intimately connected that when you cut that line, you better be prepared for the fact that your revenue is going to drop. To me, it's almost the acid test of how much do you believe in marketing is whether you can see whether the CFO can recognize the impact of marketing taking a sort of just a servicing position as opposed to a driver of the entire enterprise.
Yeah, here, Shelley, and I think that there's some interesting questions here. I'll offer some tough love to our marketing colleagues. It has to be earned.
Sure.
We can't say we're important. It has to be earned, and a lot of marketing groups in companies I have seen are not as strong as they need to be. So you have to speak the language of business. You have to understand your other functions. You have to understand the business strategy. You have to understand your value to the company. And you have to hire for that, and you have to train for that. And so it's Spencer Stewart did a bunch of research about marketing and senior marketing people and how they're seen in companies. And the relationship with the CFO is often very troubled. And they don't get out and seek the wisdom and counsel of other functions. So you've got to have an inside side and an outside side, and the great marketers do both. So you have to understand your role in the company. And to me, and Seth said this, it's about understanding people, understanding demand, understanding market, understand opportunity, moving quickly, telling a story, being relevant. There are very few people in any company looking around the corner at how markets are changing and how demand is shifting, and that's marketing's job.
I would just also say it's a journey to get there. It's not something that you just fix immediately. I think in our case, it took years. And it started with the most basic way was, to Jim's point, to come in with the data to actually be able to show the impact of our campaigns. From there, and once we were able to have that data infrastructure, we were able to start doing much more advanced modeling. We could predict the results on investment before we launched campaigns. And over time, people started to see the impact of the marketing department. And I'm with Jim. It's like, you got to know the business, get out of the brand speak, get out of it, talk like a business person.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, so that was just really, really important. And now, Adobe.com was a brochure. It was a digital brochure. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar e-commerce engine. And it's because of marketing in big part that we were able to do that. Now that's recognized, but that took years to get there. And now we got the seat at the table. But I'm with Jim. Know your business, but you got to have the data. That's what they understand. Talking about brand and these things is lovely, but if you don't have the data and they don't see your relevance to the business, it's very difficult.
Right.
I'd pick up on Jim's point too of you have to be at the level of business strategy. I mean, that's where you have to start, is what is this business trying to do? And then it should be, obvious about why marketing is essential to driving that business strategy. And I think a lot of marketing people, they just start too low down. It's like the communication strategy. No, start up at the business strategy. And I would also say, seek out the CFO. He's your friend. He or she is your friend, because together you need those two pieces. And I can recall a few meetings where actually the CFO was the person who came forward and said, no, I think we need to do this. And then you go, I've won. Okay, that's it. But you have to start the dialogue with him or her as you're thinking about the role of marketing.
So if we move on to the third theme that came out, which is kind of like the opposite of what you've all just been saying, which was what we heard from just about every inductee who's talked about the future role of marketing as they were inducted into the Hall of Fame. They all said that, the world's becoming digital, data matters, but ideas inspired by customers matter most. So I think we should hear a little bit of comments from some of our other inductees in this. So let's hear from the originator, Al Rees, the guy who invented the idea of positioning and the idea of positioning a brand around a differentiated idea.
You cannot make progress in life without doing something different. Different. Not necessarily better, but different. The Volkswagen campaign in Advertising Age was ranked the top advertising campaign, not just last year or last decade, but of the 20th century. Positioning was focused not on creativity. Positioning was focused on exactly the opposite. It wasn't focused on the message at all. Positioning was focused on the mind of the prospect. The essence of positioning is to find an open hole in the mind of your prospect. As complicated and as simple as that. And fill that open hole with your brand name. It's as true today as it was back in 1972. I say search, and you think Google. I say soy milk, and you think silk. I say electric car, and you think Tesla.
So there you can see right back to the beginning. And this was about 5 years ago that he said this. But now let's go back to a more recent inductee, and let's learn what Wendy Clark, who's been on the client side at Coca-Cola for many years, but is now CEO of Dentsu, Let's look at her view on ideas.
Nothing will replace the power and impact of a big idea. Not AI, not VR, not automation, not real-time data analytics application. And don't get me wrong, we're using all of those across various brands to great effect. But they are not proxies for the impact of big, famous, motivating, moving ideas for brands. When we see these ideas and experience them, we talk about them, we share them, we remember them, and many of us envy them. They are transformative, not incremental. They are so simple, yet entirely irresistible. They are unforgettable. And like JFK, Sting, Ellen, and Beyonce, they really only need one word or two to reference them and evoke all of those reactions. Nike Kaepernick, State Street Fearless Girl, Dove Real Beauty, Apple 1984, Coca-Cola Hilltop, Volkswagen Think Small.
Inductees, as I said, talked a lot about ideas. And they talk about ideas as ideas, and ideas from the perspective of finding them by understanding the customer. So let's have a third view from Keith Weed, who really is known as the ultimate customer champion. The guy who won't go to his office till he's been to a supermarket and talk to customers and gets into trouble with his CFO for it.
Yeah, marketing is all about people. And the first thing is about putting people first. And I just think it's really good to remind ourselves that we're at service of people, people's real lives. You know, not a pair of armpits in search of deodorant or a head of hair looking for a shampoo. These are real people with real lives. And if we understand what that's about, we can serve it better than anybody else. And I think in this busy world right now, it's easy to forget that that is what marketing is about, like serving people better.
Keith, and one last perspective from Esther Lee, a very different business. She's CMO of MetLife.
I arrive at a few choice ahas. First, marketing as a practice is always changing, largely due to emerging technologies and capabilities and new ways with which to engage people. But the fundamental role of marketing remains unchanged, which brings me to number 2. Marketing is not how we sell our wares to customers and tell our stories. It's about how we become the best of what our customers need. We must think about how we create a better world for the customers we serve, and by doing so, we earn their advocacy in return. Third, marketing is not just the art part, great campaigns, design, videos, and it's certainly not just at the end of the business planning process. It's also a core business engine, the customer strategies that help define the business strategies. But number 4, having said that, marketing is the unique domain of that convergence of art and science. Imagination, big ideas, leaps off the page, the familiar and yet the surprising.
Shelley has given birth to so many great ideas. I did tell Shelley this, that I got the pleasure of talking to Bob Dudley, who was the CEO of BP for many years, at the time that Beyond Petroleum was born. And he said, give my regards to Shelley. She is the mother of the BP brand. So let's have the mother of brands in the room. Not the mother of dragons, but the mother of brands. Let us ask Shelley to say, why is it that in this world where you guys have been talking about how important data and understanding of business and strategy and CFOs, how is it that ideas are still so important?
Well, I think they drive everything else. If, they're at the core of everything you do. It's, as Wendy Clark said, it's like one word and you're off. But maybe I could take just a minute and tell the BP story, because I do think it's instructive to all the CMOs who've been saying, how do I get a seat at the table? So we were asked to do a print ad for BP about their commitment to the environment. And they had just committed to spending $1 billion on research about alternative sources of energy. And John Brown was the first CEO of an energy company to say climate change is real. He made a speech. The other CEO said, John, you've left the church. What are you saying? This was like 20 years ago, right? And so they asked us to do a print ad. So the creative people, having talked to consumers, many consumers, talked to people at BP, came back and said, actually, there's a much bigger idea here. This is not just a print ad. This is a change in point of view for an entire global company. And so I have to say, I do feel a little bit for the CEO and the COO who were in the room at the time expecting a print ad. We completely redid BP. We redid the logo. We changed the typeface. We did Beyond Petroleum. We showed them what they would do in their convenience stores, at the pumps, on their employee IDs. And this went on for 45 minutes, at the end of which the CEO and the COO could not speak. They were stunned. Now, just about put yourself in that position. I'm coming to this table. Some woman is going to show me a print ad. And now we have given them an idea. But it was their idea. So here's the other thing. I disagree with Al Reese a little bit. Not disagree, but in the middle of all of this, there is an enterprise. There is a producer of goods or services, value, and you've got to find it's not just any old idea. You've got to find an idea that actually captures the purpose of the enterprise. And so in this instance, even though they hadn't laddered it up to anything big, everything they were doing was moving beyond where the petroleum business was. And so that was, and then it took over the whole company. Then there was never a meeting, by the way, going forward, where the CMO was not present at the table, because she was now the guide to drive all this forward. And so ideas are, they're very powerful things in any event. But I think in our world, they make all the difference. They are the great differentiator. I think we went through a period in marketing and advertising, and I think Wendy Clark was referring to that a little bit in her speech of, where people would say, oh, we don't need creative people anymore. Just get the digital guys. Where are the digital guys? Everything's digital. And that was great to get the digital guys in as long as they were the ones who had the idea. But if in my, in too many instances, you have people who come in from different areas who need an idea to actually make what they do valuable. And so the gift of the idea to everyone in an organization, in an enterprise who is trying to achieve a goal is the thing it's the glue that brings everything together and that inspires people, makes them want to come to work actually each day. And so, I could go on forever, but I just, if you don't have an idea, forget about everything else.
What role do ideas play at Adobe, John, given your...
Well, I was going to just say, I actually, you guys, I kind of find the topic of creativity and ideas versus digital, it's very dated. Shelley, I'm not saying that you were saying that. It was almost like in some of the videos that I was watching, because first of all, in my opinion, marketing will never be done by robots. Creativity, ideas, instinct, we're talking about human communication. That's the soul of marketing. It's fundamental. But I think if you think of digital more as a complement and a partner in that process, it goes back to the first comment about the more you know about your customer, the more ideas you can come up with and the more creative you can be. That idea can then be proven through data. I think we have to stop. I just find it kind of dated. And I think as marketers, you embrace both. You embrace it. You embrace creativity, and we should be proud, because that's why I want to be a marketer. I'm not a data analyst. I embrace the creativity, but I'm so glad we have digital, because now I can actually go in and prove it, that the value that I'm making. So I think we should stop talking that way and start talking about it's an ecosystem, and we've got all these tools at our disposal, but nothing's going to replace an idea. Shelley, I totally agree with you. Nothing.
But
That's just what I would say.
So, John, some of the great experiences I've had is, engineers actually are wonderfully creative if you just bring them to the table too.
Yes.
And you sort of say, okay, the idea here is we value the customer. We're easy to do business with. We respect and recognize the value of our customers. Well, who could deliver that better than the people who are designing the whole sales process, the website, it's just sort of, just bring them in from the start, let them be part of the idea, and then they know how to take that idea and let it live in everything they do. And I think, companies they tend to be very siloed. And so you can't always get the insight from everybody who you should get the insight from. And the idea is only powerful if it lives everywhere.
Totally.
I would also say to really reinforce everything that's been said here, advice to the people on this conversation: if you look at the Hall of Famers here and the future Hall of Famers, people like Wendy and Fernando Machado and Ann Lunez, they make time for ideas. They expect their organizations to bring ideas. They communicate that it's important to them to see ideas, and they set big goals and high standards, and then say it's okay to fail. You gotta be clear as a leader that you want to see ideas, that ideas drive a business. I mean, Fernando says to his team at Burger King, I have nothing on my calendar every Friday from 12 until 6. I'm just going to sit in my office with my hands on my desk and come to me with any ideas. Don't worry about funding, money, ROI. If the idea is about our brand, and here's what our brand is about, I want to hear the boldest, craziest, wackiest stuff, and I commit to you, I will act on the ones that we agree are right and good. So he's taking, 10% of his week and just saying nothing on my calendar but ideas.
I also say, Jim, as you're saying, and I'm thinking, there's a certain amount of courage involved in all of this. This is not for the faint of heart. Some of those ideas are really crazy. They are really wacky. And you've got to be brave enough to come forward and say, I'd like to talk about this one. There are not that many people who have the courage, I think, to sort of move forward with an idea that's really crazy. And those tend to be the ones that are the great ones.
Yep, Shelley, bingo. That's the quote of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's we've got so many great questions coming in from the audience. Bob, do you want to pick one?
Yeah, I have one actually that was very pertinent for this discussion, and it has to do with customer experiences. Given the fact that important brand ideas are big in nature, how should marketers deliver their ideas in an environment when customer experiences have become more transactional and are more frequently online?
Mr. Adobe, you want to handle that one first, then we'll follow you.
Sure. I mean, okay. So yeah. So well, first of all, I don't think being online has any is necessarily any detriment to delivering a fabulous customer experience. And I'll say two things, two thoughts for you. The first is, I think at our company, the first thing to deliver a great customer experience really requires far beyond marketing. And Jim, you were talking, or maybe Shelley, you were talking about silos and getting out of silos. And so I always talk about the end of the org chart, that org charts are basically dead. Because if you want to create a great experience online, and again, I wouldn't think of the experience just as being online, the total customer experience, regardless of where they engage with you, then, I can't do that unless I'm totally in sync with my IT colleagues and product marketing and customer support and sales. So that's a skill people have to develop, getting out of the silo. I control this, I'll hand it off to you. That's the first thing. From an online perspective, I will just tell you, I'll give you an example. We just had our online Max event. Max is the world's largest creativity conference. And traditionally, it's been about 20,000 people that go to LA. And we have a little bit of digital online augmentation. And with COVID, we had to pivot the event to a global online virtual event. And I will tell you, we had to open our minds to what that could be. And it happened, I think it was last week, so much is happening. It was last week. And from an event that went to a 25,000 person in-person event, we had 20 million people around the world viewing the content. We had 10 million people in a live stream. We had 52 hours of around the world live stream, 460 sessions, 481 speakers. And from a metrics perspective, it was the most successful event we have ever had in the history of Adobe across anything you could possibly measure. That was a 100% digital event. Now, am I saying that we will never have physical events again? Of course not. That's also very important. But I think if you take some risks, as Shelley has said, you have the data, the customer insight, you can deliver fantastic experiences online. And that's just an example.
John, you're getting some people who thank you for the event on the side. So there are a few 20 million in on this. Hey, another thought on that. I had a long talk with Shelley House, who's the CMO of Ulta, right? Ulta Beauty, hot brand. And, retailers with COVID, those that were not in essential items got, their business just stopped. They had been working on their app, and they launched the app right before COVID. And the app is unreal. I mean, I have a daughter who's squarely in their target audience. It's the number one app she goes to on her phone most frequently. Beyond Google, beyond Maps, beyond anything, it's the Ulta Beauty app. It's so beautifully designed, fabulous content, deep customer understanding. And so what happened during COVID? They were much more resilient than their competition. And actually their business has been, it's been affected, sure, but not by that much.
Okay, so let's go on to our last topic. Though there are some other topics I'd like to bring up at the end, which the audience has brought up, which is, and it won't surprise you, what did surprise us was it was not the top topic that came up, but it's the impact of digital and how marketing needs to change for the future, which I think we should really spend some time on. But we're going to hear first from someone who was inducted, I think, in 2014 or 15.
2015.
2015. And he has been, actually talked to him the other day, and he said, I've been going on about this forever, and at last people are starting to listen to me. And this is the importance of digital. And this is Joe Tripodi, the former CMO of Coca-Cola, and actually many, many other brands. Yeah. But he talked about Coke here.
When I think about the evolution of marketing, and when I think about how companies evolve from local, multi-country, international, global, I think the next game, quite honestly, is networked. And I think that those organizations that are networked internally, externally, and with consumers will be the most successful organizations. So what does this mean? I think what's a networked organization? First of all, I would argue what it's not. A networked organization, it's not a siloed corporation. It's executing against a long-term strategy that assumes certainties and variables in the market, because that game is over. It is over for big companies. That we are living in the time of unbelievable disruption and change that's unprecedented. And we don't know these variables and these uncertainties now, and we can't apply the past to the future. It's just not going to happen. And so you need flexibility in order to keep up with this pace of change. It's an entirely different mindset that you have to bring to bear. So what a network organization is it's a compelling opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to be more of a learning organization, to be more nimble, to change more rapidly. It's your ability to move wisdom, learning, knowledge out to the fringes of your enterprise faster than a competition, to shorten your learning loop, to share the good, the bad, and the ugly faster. If you can do that and become a learning organization, then I believe in this new world, you'll be more adaptive and have an adaptive culture, have a culture that can allow you to take more risk and thereby be more successful and to win in the marketplace. So this evolution is critical, I believe, to the long-term success and viability of the enterprise. That's what I believe.
From Anne Lunes on the same topic.
Even more than that, what I'm most incredibly proud of is the role that marketing played in the transformation of our company. Because we made a big bet in 2010 to go all in on digital, and we dedicated 75% of our budget to it. Everybody thought we were crazy. We experimented with every channel. We built always-on engagement strategies. We did social, we did email, we did mobile, we did tons of video. We made Adobe.com the hub of all of our business. We made it one of the biggest corporate websites in the world with 9.2 billion visitors per year. And with the right technology, an amazing team, new processes, and lots of data, we became, I think, the role models for marketing transformation, proving that marketing could indeed drive a business.
From Anne Lunes on the same topic.
Even more than that, what I'm most incredibly proud of is the role that marketing played in the transformation of our company. Because we made a big bet in 2010 to go all in on digital, and we dedicated 75% of our budget to it. Everybody thought we were crazy. We experimented with every channel. We built always-on engagement strategies. We did social, we did email, we did mobile, we did tons of video. We made Adobe.com the hub of all of our business. We made it one of the biggest corporate websites in the world with 9.2 billion visitors per year. And with the right technology, an amazing team, new processes, and lots of data, we became, I think, the role models for marketing transformation, proving that marketing could indeed drive a business.
We better kick off the discussion on the role of digital.
Yeah. What else can I say? I feel like I've been talking about digital this entire time.
Who wants to go first?
No, maybe I'll just share with you guys just maybe some of the most profound changes that have come with we think of ourselves as digital only, and I don't mean that from a marketing execution. I think it's part of the fabric of the culture and the nature of the company now. And Joe Tripodi talked about networks. I talked about sort of the end of the org chart and when the move to digital and the recognition that we have to think about the totality of customer experience. That was a fundamental change. But I would think though, and I talked earlier about the deep insight that we have now with our customers. And one of the most fundamental changes as we learned so much more about our customers was just the way we thought about them and the way that we engage with them. So first, we threw out a customer segmentation model that the company had been using for 20 plus years, a kind of a traditional thought of customers in terms of what are the products they buy and how do they use them? And we moved to an intent-based segmentation. What are they trying to accomplish? What is their intent? Which had a profound impact on all aspects of our product development, our marketing, and our communication. That was really fundamental. But we also started to think about our customers more as I also talked about, I know I talked a lot about deep engagement, about this notion of community. And I don't mean it in a trite way. Like, how do we really think about these customers in a way where they're deeply engaged with us? And so I can give you tons of examples of that. One great example is our own brand identity at the company. When you see Adobe, you go to Max, or you go to one of our digital marketing summits, a lot of what you see, the fabric of who we are, is not created by us. It's not created by our in-house creative department. It's created by our customers. And that really brings them into the fabric of the company and they're part of us. And we wouldn't have done that years ago. That wasn't even a way that we thought. And I'm going to credit digital for that. And that's digital because that's the insight. That's what they want. That's what they want to do. They want to be engaged with us at a totally different level than just buying products. That's a great example. The other thing I will say is the thing that we learned in this big move to digital, and Jim, I think you and I talked about this a year ago when we were teaching a course in Cannes, is the end of perfectionism. You know, like I think marketers grow up in a space where every asset, every image has to be absolutely perfect. And that sounds, we all want that. And of course, I still want everything to be perfect. But with the move to digital, we had to embrace a test and iterate culture. And that's not just about the products you use and process. It's a mindset, it's risk, it's putting things out there, seeing what happens, changing on the fly. That took several years for us to embrace and adopt. But the return on investment that we saw in that agility, I mean, I talked about Max. I'll tell you, our summit, our digital marketing summit in March, 3 weeks before the shutdown in March, we had a 25,000 person event in Las Vegas. We had 3 weeks to change it to virtual. And we did it. And we had 500,000 people also attend that event. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why we could do that, and we made mistakes and we didn't know what we were doing and we're not perfect like anyone else, but we had the bravery to do it because we felt empowered by the technology and what we could deliver. So, I mean, I could really go on and on about, I feel like I've talked about a lot of these topics, but I just think people don't recognize, they think about tools and they think about data and that's all part of it. But fundamentally, it changes how you think about yourself, your career, how you think about your customer. It's much more fundamental than anything you might think, at least in our experience.
There's some sort of related to that. There's a lot of questions coming in on a related topic, which is who are the audiences for marketing in the future? You know, what's come up is we've heard a lot, in fact, from our inductees about customers. Shelley talked about ESG and investors a little bit. John, you brought up, you know, the idea of community. How should marketers be thinking about who the audiences are for the future and who they bring into the marketing department and how to address them in the right way? That's a big topic. I don't know, Jim, if you want to start.
I think that, you know, if you're schooled at P&G, you're taught that every brand, you start with who you're trying to delight, what's your purpose, what do you offer, and how do you do it, right? So that's kind of the basic outline for every brand review in P&G. And the who has always been customers, right? Consumers. I think that's shifting. I think the who is, of course, customers. And John just spoke about different ways of segmentation, but customers are still central, of course. But it's also your employees. Mm-hmm. If you're not marketing or you're not talking to them about the kind of company you're trying to become, you're not going to create the kind of company you want to become. I think it's the underrepresented. You have to be thinking about your company and your brand and what's the role of bringing the underrepresented into your consumer group and into your employee base. And then I think the last one is yourself. The reflection people are making about how do I want to spend my life? With what kind of company and what kind of organization, what kind of purpose do I want to spend my life? So I think the who has gotten way richer and more complicated. And answering those questions I've just thrown out there, I haven't even gotten into the planet. I mean, that's embedded in there as well. People are going to have to start to think about their brand and their brand framework and their brand direction and the company direction and answering those kinds of questions. So the who has gotten more complicated, and I think in a good way.
I agree with that. I mean, you know, you sort of have to think it's everyone, but at different moments in time and for different purposes, you get more specific. But one of the things about the world we live in right now is everybody knows everything instantaneously. I mean, I love this distinction between B2B and B2C, as if the people who are making business decisions are not seeing what's going on with consumers and everybody else. And so this is either, depending on your point of view, a good thing or a bad thing. But that people now are everywhere and they know everything instantaneously. And if you forget that for 1 minute, you're going to be in trouble. And so I think, Jim, I think it's a wonderful way of expressing it. It's expanding the view of the who as you now start out in thinking about any kind of new narrative or campaign.
So John, what about at Adobe? Where do people join Adobe? Because they want big tech salaries, or because they really care for about what it's doing?
well, I'm sure people have different motivations. I mean, I think at Adobe, again, I think there is just, I said earlier, I think their purpose really matters at Adobe. I think if our founders way back when, I mean, it was always fundamental. 1% of the profits were always given out from a CSR perspective. There was always this sort of belief in doing good sincerely, and I think employees do come. But obviously, employees come for other reasons as well. But I think doing good in purpose. I think another thing for Adobe employees is that fundamental belief in creativity. And again, I don't just mean creativity in artwork and pictures and video. I mean it really as a culture and a mindset. And if you walked around the halls of Adobe, it would be that way. So I think they come for many reasons. But I agree with Jim. I think when you think about your audiences today, I just think it's all stakeholders, even people that aren't your customers, because they have a lot of influence on your customers. And so you have to really pay attention to a lot of people across the fold in the environment.
I also think, it's hard to imagine a brand or company and not thinking about health, wellness, planet, inclusivity, purpose. And we've talked about these things for the last hour and a half. But I think that they have, as you think about the future, they have a even stronger role to play in companies and brands. And so, I mean, in some sense, one of the lasting changes coming through this pandemic is going to be biometrics, screening, health and wellness on the spot. So it sort of is going to have to be part of every company. And then I've heard some academics talk about this with, a lot of data about the importance of health, wellness, and planet. This is where we all have to figure out our role and have to have a voice in these areas. And one good thing with this crisis is leaders, companies are standing up more and taking a point of view on area. NASCAR banning Confederate flags. Mm-hmm. Things like that happening. Harley Davidson has taken some strong stands, and these are polarizing with their customer base. But it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing by their employees, and it's just the right thing for society.
And Jim, wouldn't you agree that is now the expectation that people have on brands? The trust in governments and other entities is so low that they're looking to brands to lead in these areas, and we have to step up and do it.
And so when brands don't behave well, because there are, not to name any tech brands specifically, there are some tech brands who behave perhaps less well than others, and yet are still enormously successful. So how big a factor is this versus other things in the success of a business?
Yeah, yes, they are successful, right, Shelley? But they're just on the, they're reacting all the time now. So their business is at risk. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm. They seem successful, but I think that, as you say, the vulnerability is, and it's you watch the internal audience first. I mean, that's the biggest vulnerability, that people who are proud to work for a company or something, and then things are revealed that are surprising to everyone. And it's really hard to recover from that. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of work with Boeing. I mean, this is the company that was built on pride, and rightly so, in so many factors, because of just what they've achieved in flight and space. And it was just this kind of culture where people work for the company for decades, and they're devastated. They are devastated by what's happened, and the recovery is really difficult, because even beyond the people who work for Boeing and believe in Boeing, so now they have to attract the next cohort of people to work for them, and that gets really difficult. And so, will Boeing come back to be one of the great companies? Yes, Are they going to go through a very difficult period now? Yes, they are. And it's because of it's because of the people of the company and the customers and everyone else associated with it. Is you just have a moment of disbelief and almost sorrow, and that's it's really hard to come back from that.
So one other thing that has come up a lot in the questions is looking for the advice from you guys. If you were wanting to come into marketing now to take on the biggest challenges that marketing faces in the next few years, where should you go? What should you do?
In terms of career?
Yep.
Well, this is a very personal choice.
Yeah.
When my friend Antonio Lucio went from HP to Facebook, I said, that's the one CMO job that I might come out of retirement to do. And why? It's important. It's challenging. If you make a change in the right direction in the narrative and arc of the company, you made an enormous impact. So I think look for a place where the company is in harmony with who you are and when you're at your strength and what your values are and where you think you can make an impact. Maybe it's a company where marketing isn't important and you can make a change in that. Maybe it's a company like P&G where marketing is important and you want to help them to go to the next level. So, and go to a place that's going to care about you and your development. Exactly. It can be a small company or a big company, but you need to continue to be developing and learning and expanding yourself or leave.
I agree. These are personal choices, but I do have to say there's something very compelling about joining a founder when a company is being built. To be part of, you don't have to worry about your seat at the table, you'll be there. But to be part of the original conception, and where nothing is set in stone, where you don't have any legacy that you have to think about or solve for, but where you can sort of just create it from nothing. I think that's, to me, at this point, it's very exciting.
I would just add, because I agree with all those comments, I think chemistry matters and culture matters. And go to a place where you feel connected. Doesn't mean you're going to love every coworker, but you have to feel a sense of connection with the people at a visceral level. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They'll go for a job title. They'll go somewhere where they just don't really feel as connected to the culture. And so I find when I really enjoy with the people that I work with, I can do wonderful things. And so I would also really pay a lot of attention, back to instinct, pay a lot of attention to your gut and your feeling if you're interviewing or meeting people in different companies, because I think that's really critical.
Remember when people are interviewing with people, they're on their best behavior. So if you don't come in, head for the hills.
So out of time, I think you're really getting, John, particularly to one point that one of our other inductees, we didn't have time to show the clip, said that marketing has to be fun.
Yeah,
it's not.
For sure.
It's not fun. It's true of any job, but especially if you're not enjoying it, you're it's the wrong brand.
Yes.
So we're out of time. I think that you, John, again, have set the bar for marketing, which is once marketing gets 20 million people online to a marketing event, then we know that we have a seat at the table. And along with that, and make sure that half of those people are not marketers. We've got the CFOs, CEOs on there too. Yeah.
Great. And just to wrap up, Jim, Shelley, John, Jim, thank you so much. And Seth, of course. I'll tell you one thing I've certainly observed today is that all of you totally deserve to be in the Marketing Hall of Fame. So thank you so much. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank our sponsors, and also to keep in touch with us, which we hope you'll do, marketinghalloffame.org. Thank you all for joining, and have a very wonderful day and be safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great to be here.